Hey guys, this is Steve Darcey with GoEngineer, and today I want to talk about tanks. So I've got a little bit of a plant layout here, and it's got a bunch of horizontal and vertical tanks here. And for the most part, a couple main things that tanks have are, of course, a bunch of sheet metal or plate steel that you're bending, putting it around stuff. Then you have all these little pieces of pipe that come off of here, and then we got flanges that need to connect other pipe and other places to stuff. The other main important thing is, how are we going to support it? Are we going to support it by something on the bottom? It's going to sit on something? Does it need to have some brackets so it can sit up on something else? How are we going to hold this thing together? Or maybe it's sitting on the ground. We do have some plate steel or something to hold this thing up. So a couple different ways we can do this. I want to kind of show you a little breakdown, and I'm going to model up something similar to this, kind of like a horizontal one. This one's pretty simple to where I just have one piece of pipe going up, one piece of pipe going down. So I'm going to make mine a little bit more difficult than this one. So we're going to take a look at a more simple assembly like this guy. I did this a little bit different than what you might expect, but it seems to work good when we're doing a bigger plant layout. So I do have kind of a tank assembly. The main part is, of course, all the weldment information. This is what we're going to do from scratch on this demonstration. And then I've got a slip-on weld flange and then a weld neck flange put on top of there. I put these guys in an assembly environment, so that way when I need to connect these using the pipe and the routing components, then they'll work the way they should. So let's get to it. We're going to start from scratch using the part template. And I like everything centered. I'm going to start on the front plane. Two different things. If you're not going to manufacture this, then you might not care where the weld seams are. But in this case, maybe we are. And so I'm going to go ahead and I like to create a little gap up here. Make a little trim there. Get rid of that. Let's go ahead and put a dimension on this. Make that 72 inches. Go ahead and make this guy 45. And we'll make this gap a little teeny tiny. 0.125. So whatever your weld gap is going to be, that's what you need that thing to be. Okay. Select these two lines, make them construction. There we go. And so now all I got to do is extrude this guy. We're going to extrude him using a thin feature. So notice thin feature is already turned on. One direction, we're going to make this pretty thick, 5/8 of an inch. You can see it's offsetting. I'm putting this to the dimension. 72 inches is actually the inner diameter. So I'm offsetting this to the outside. And we're going to make this 10 feet. So I can type in 10 FT. And that looks pretty good. And we'll go ahead and say OK. All right, next I need the exact same thing on the other side going out in the opposite direction. And before we do that, I kind of messed something up. I'm going to go edit the sketch on that. Notice that's the radius. Let's switch that guy back to a diameter. And then let's make him 72 in diameter. There we go. That looks much better. All right, so now I need to go back to the other side. Again, sketch on the front plane. Just do a new sketch. I'm going to steal that inside, except if I do, actually I just drew a draw circle. That might be a little easier. So I'll make sure that I connect it to the inside and then kind of do the same thing. The reason why I want to connect it to the inside is so that way if it moves on the other side, then it's going to move on this one too. So same type of technique. We'll go do trim entities. I'm using the power trim command, so I'll drag this around. Get rid of all that. Put a dimension. There's my weld gap. And that looks pretty good. Oh, I need one more dimension for the angle there. And I want him 45 degrees down there. Now it looks like on that trim I did lose my my reference. So I'm going to pick on that. Hold Control. Just pick on the inside edge of that, and we'll make those co-radial. They'll have the same radius there. All right, same kind of thing. I want to extrude. This time I'm going to go out in the opposite direction, so I'll flip it. Still going 120. But these are going to be separate pieces, so I don't want to merge the result. I haven't made it into a weldment yet, so merge result's going to be on by the default. The direction and everything should be good. Happy with that. Go ahead and say OK. And there's my seam. Everything looks good. All right, next I need my end caps here. These are pretty simple. It's just made from a revolve. I'll sketch on a plane. The right plane is good. Do new sketch. All right, now I'm just going to draw this kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Just 2 lines like that. We'll go and do the ellipse command. Start at the center of that, go off in one direction, then off in the other. There we go. And then we just need to trim that up. That looks good. And then we can constrain it. So I need this guy and hold down control. This edge, going to be collinear. This needs to go, let's see if I did it right. He is actually stuck to the center of that, so that's good. So then I just need the height of this. And we'll pierce that. That sticks the height, that's good. We should only have 1 degree of freedom available. It's this width here. And you're pretty much going to buy these guys. There is a default. So if I do the smart dimension, do that. And instead of actually putting a dimension, I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to double click on this. That way I get this amount here, and I'm going to select on that dimension. So equals that, divided by 4. That gives me 18. And now that this is a dimension, if this changes to 90 inches, then this is going to be 90 divided by 4. So that is going to be a persistent dimension there. This is pretty much it. We can do a revolve. Boss or base. I don't want it to automatically close because I'm going to do a thin feature. So again, thin, make it 0.625. The axis of revolution is going to be this guy. And notice what it does there. It's going to offset that guy. Looks pretty good. And again, it's not a weldment yet, so make sure you uncheck the merge result. All right, say OK. Happy with that. Next, I need this guy on the other side. If you used symmetry, I have that front plane. This makes it pretty easy. I can do a mirror. And then I don't want to feature the mirror. I want to do bodies to mirror. And then we'll just select on that body. Flip them on the other side. All right, so that looks pretty good. So now for some of the hard part. I'm going to do kind of 2 of these things. I'm going to do them in 2 different ways, just so you can kind of see the theory of how to do it. One is going to be doing it with planes. So I'll kind of start off with the easy one here. So I'll do the right plane, do a new sketch. And I'm going to just draw a line here. And let's go ahead and draw another line down here. Now, of course, you'd want to fully dimension these things. So I may want to dimension it from the height of the top of that thing if I want to. So make it 12 inches. Or maybe sometimes you're going to dimension to the center. So it just kind of depends on how you want to set these pieces up, okay? As far as what the heights and then where the locations are, whether you're going to do them from the center location or whether you're going to do it to the outside or the seam. You know, it just kind of depends on where you're going to do it. Okay, also 2 other little options that we're going to do. Sometimes the pipes will go into the tank. Sometimes they'll be chopped off and be coped with the side wall of the tank, or in this case, the inner side diameter of the tank. Either way, so I'm going to do it both ways. If I do care about what the dimension is to the inside, then I may want to put, you know, another dimension for that. There we go. We'll make that guy just say 8 is good. And if I'm going to trim it off to the inside, it doesn't really matter what this is, but I would regularly dimension this guy, make him fully defined, but I'm just going to leave him for now. All right, and that's it. Finish out of that sketch, and then I'm going to go ahead and create some weldments. I'm going to do a structural member. On the structural member, I have this set up for my ANSI configurations there. I'm going to go ahead and get pipe. Standard, I have some S40, Schedule 40 pipe there. And for this one, I'll go ahead and do a, let's do 4-inch. Should be good. All right, and then that's it. Pretty much you can select on the individual parts. Go ahead and say OK to that one. All right, so I'm going to put a larger one. And we'll go grab a 6-inch, select on that guy, and say OK. All right, so pretty simple. Let's go ahead and do a little section view here. And we'll drag this out just a little bit so we can see our whole pipe there. And we're going to do two things. This pipe we're going to leave in, so no weirdness there. The only thing is, though, I do need to chop off the top of this guy. So typically what I will do is sketch on the top of this face, do a new sketch, just steal that. So just go right into convert entities. That'll get the outside edge there. And then we're just going to do a extrude cut. It's going to go down into the part. You can drag it down there. You can kind of see we're cutting away this. I usually do up to surface. So that way if the one moves, the other one does too. You could also do up to next if you want. But the other thing that you want to do is just make sure that we're going to cut only this part. So make sure you do extrude thin. So it's just going to cut that guy. All right, so now we have hard edges, little black edges there. And this pipe is going all the way down through there. So it looks pretty good. And if the line moves, this pipe's going to move, that sketch moves, everything updates. All right, so next let's cope this guy out. Before we do that, these are two completely separate little parts and pieces. Typically, I'll do my offset surfaces before I do any of these cuts. So I'm going to drag that up. Make sure you have the surface ribbon up. If you don't, just right-click on any one of these ribbons, get surface. And I'm going to do an offset surface. I'm going to select on the inside of that, offset at 0. So that's good. That's going to make it do a copy surface. And so then what I can do is I can chop this guy off. So cut with surface, select on our surface. And same issue here is I only want to do it for that guy. So I don't want it to auto select. I want to select just this guy. The other thing I need to look at is this little arrow here. If whatever the arrow direction is, you can kind of see what we're doing is we're using this surface to cut. Anything it's going to cut is going to go, in this case, to the outside. Well, I don't want that. I want to flip it. So it's going to cut everything to the inside. So we'll say OK. And notice now that surface is actually cutting that piece of pipe there. Now we need to turn that surface off. So I'll hide him. We'll go ahead and do this cut next. Go ahead and rotate around to the back side. This is going to be very similar to the other one. Just going to do a new sketch. We're going to steal that, convert entities. This time I'll do a little bit different. We'll do extrude cut. I, again, only want it to cut through this component. And I'm going to say up to vertex. And I'm going to select on the end point of my little line there. There we go. So notice it cuts through there. If I rotate around, you can see it's now coped to the inside of that tank there. So that looks pretty cool. So another little technique that I use quite often, let's go ahead and turn that sketch off. Go ahead and pull that down so I have my cut on the top, is sometimes we don't have the nice necessity of doing these things all on the same plane. So a couple other things that I do is use 3D sketches. So the origin point is always a good place to start for a 3D sketch. So we'll do a 3D sketch here. And just start with the line command. And I'm going to start on this point. I'm going to hit the tab key. That's going to rotate the 3D sketch around. I'm going to go out in the direction that I want to do it. Then I'm going to go up a little bit. Pick a point. So that way I got a horizontal and vertical line. I can dimension it. So that way I know exactly how far this thing's going. We'll go ahead and say 50 inches is good. All right, and then this is kind of a little bit of the tricky part. I'm going to do a line again. I'm going to pick that point, hit tab, tab again. That way I'm going in that direction. This one, I need kind of a line there. And then I'm going to do another line coming off in that same direction. You'll see what's kind of going on there is I have two lines in there. I'll show you why I got two lines in just a bit. Okay, so we need to do a couple dimensions. I do want to make sure that these guys, if I pick both, actually I do have the collinear relationship, so that's good. That's exactly what I want. So let's go ahead and put a dimension out there. You can see this dimension. Maybe I want this to be 30 degrees off. So it's coming off there. Okay. And then I do need to position, I want how far the top of this is to the top of the end of the pipe. So on that case, I need to put a point. So I'm putting a point on that dot. Then I'm going to go into select mode, pick on the point, pick the outside of that husk there, and we're going to say on surface. There we go. So now what I can do is I can dimension from that point to the top of this, and that gives me my offset. So say for instance my pipe's going to be 8 inches off the top of that thing. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, so then I kind of need the same thing going down. I'm going to dimension from that to that end point, and maybe I'm going to go 6 inches into that. All right, the rest of these guys are really just for construction. If I can pick them correctly. There we go. And that's going to be the pipe that I'm going to use. All right, so I'm getting pretty close. I do have some blue lines in there. If I drag this guy around a little bit, you see what he's doing? He's actually rotating around the pivot of this guy. And that's why I wanted to draw this extra little line in there. So let me go ahead and draw one more line. I do want to make sure that this guy is along an axis there. So you can kind of see it picked up the X direction there. So then I'm going to pick on that, hold down Control, pick on that, and merge those points. So that way I know for a fact that this is going to be on that plane, you know, slicing across there. And then this makes it kind of easy. If I double click on this, make it 60 degrees, rotates around, and now I've got my piece of pipe hanging out there at 60 degrees or whatever you decide to make it. So 3D sketches are pretty cool. That way you can actually do all your line segments in one sketch. So there are many times that I typically do that. Makes it pretty nice and easy and convenient. All right, so we'll finish out of that. Again, go into Weldments, do a structural member. We'll go ahead and leave this guy at 6 inches as well. Go ahead and select on our line there. Go ahead and say OK. And same technique. I'm going to go and turn off the 3D sketch. Select on the face of that. Do a new sketch. Convert the entities. Go into an extrude cut. This time I want to cut through this body, and I'm just going to leave it on that. Alright, so now I got a hole inside there. Looks good. Alright, so now for some more fun part. So I was originally going to kind of do just a bottom like this, but this is pretty simple. You know, it's some plate that we're just cutting off, coping to the outside of that face, then putting some plate steel on here. But then I went online and I found kind of a cool tank. This guy right here. And notice what his feet look like. I'm going to do this kind of all with one piece. And they cope to the side of that, and they also have some kind of crazy little geometry there. So I thought I'd do something similar to that, make it a little bit different. All right, so let's go back to our piece. And I'm just going to make one of these feet. Again, I'm going to kind of sketch on the right side plane. That looks good. And I'm just going to sketch one of the feet. Looks good. Go ahead and make these guys equal. I can pick on the midpoint here. Actually, let's just draw a line. I like doing this. We'll do a center line from midpoint to midpoint. Make that center line vertical. It is. That's good. That way I have symmetry across that. Then put all your dimensions in. Let's make that guy construction. And let's give it a little bit of height here. And let's go ahead and make it a 12 inches on the bottom there. So something like that. All right, and that's pretty much it. I'd probably, if I'm doing sheet metal, I wouldn't have to worry about it. I could just do the sheet metal tools. In this case, I may want to put some little fillets in the corners. Let's go make them a little bigger so you can see them. All right, same technique. We're going to do extrude boss. I've only got one profile, so it's going to be a thin. If I want the 12 to be the outside, then I can flip it. So it's all going to the inside. But then that's not my bend radius. So let's go ahead and leave it that way. That looks good. And then I need to go, I don't really care exactly how far out this is going to go. Because I'm going to actually do some trimming on this guy. These feet are going to kind of go outwards. So I do want to make sure that I go out far enough past that thing. So let's just do 50 inches is fine. Again, merge result is now not checked because I actually have a weldment feature there. The weldment feature. All right. So next I need to trim that guy. So I'm going to use the front plane. And I'm going to trim. This guy's going to go all the way up to where this intersection occurs, somewhere up there. And he's also going to kind of come down at an angle. There we go. Good enough. Make this guy collinear. Make this collinear. Make the bottom collinear. Go ahead and put a dimension on this. Whatever it should be. And you know, maybe if it goes straight down, actually let's do this. Maybe this guy's going to be horizontal or vertical. Put a dimension on that. I want to find where this intersection is. So just pick the two, make them coincident. That puts it where it needs to be. And then I want to go ahead and put a small little dimension on here. 2 is good. So anyway, whatever the shape is that you want, just model it up. That's all you need to do. And then we're going to do a extrude cut. We're going to do through all. But I only want it to cut this component. So again, use the feature scope to where it's only going to cut this guy. You do need to flip this so it's going through it. And then the other problem is it's going to cut the inside. So I want to check the little box flip outside. Again, that arrow goes to the outside. So it's going to trim off this to the outside. So anyway, main point is you can make this thing look like whatever you want it to. Doesn't really matter. Now the other problem I have right now is that my part does go up into that thing. If I do a little section view, let's flip that. You can kind of see the little tabs in there. So I need to go ahead and trim those guys up as well. So same type of methodology. Last time I used the inside of that skin. This time I'm going to use the outside. So just do your offset surface. 0, which does a copy surface. If you want a weld gap in there, then go ahead and offset that with like a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch weld gap in there. Okay. And then now I'm just going to use that surface to do a surface cut. We're going to cut not all bodies, just this guy right here. And make sure our arrow, take a look at our arrow. There we go. We're cutting to the inside. We're removing this inside here. So that's fine. All right. And now you actually see our little hard edges there. Once you see the hard edges, then you know you've got something pretty good. So then we can hide that. The good thing about symmetry is that you can do a bunch of these. So if we go to mirror command, our mirror face, go and use that right one. Again, do bodies to mirror. So we get that on the other side. If I need that on the other side there, then we can do that as well. Just do mirror. This time we'll pick on the front plane, and the bodies to mirror are going to be these two guys. So that looks pretty good. Gets my tank up off the ground. I got some crazy looking sheet metal parts. Got a little bit of welding to do, and that looks pretty good. All right, now for the fun part. Let's go ahead and save this out. And we'll just call this T. So 1. We need to put this into an assembly. So we'll go ahead and make an assembly from the part or drawing. I always just hit the little green check there. That's the way it puts it at the 0, 0. Wherever the origin of the part is, it's going to be the origin of the assembly as well. So that's good. Make sure, if you're going to start doing this, I'm going to go ahead and put my routing add in on. And it's not that big of a deal here, but it is going to be a big deal when we drag and drop them into the next one. Because as far as what we would need to do here is when we drag and drop, you'll get a routing design library feature there. And we're going to go under flanges. And I'm going to use two of them. I'm going to use a socket slip-on weld flange, and then I'm going to use a weld neck flange. So you can see what both of those do. So I'm going to drag and drop. We get it close. It should automatically size to the size of the pipe. And notice all we got to do now is pick the different schedule I want. So I want 150 schedule. Got to save the assembly. All right, and I'm canceling out of that. The other thing you got to watch out for is when you put these guys on, sometimes they may be flipped to the other side. So you may need to flip your concentric. And then sometimes you may have to delete this mate. Let me flip that again. There we go. And give it an offset. If I pick on these two faces, and put a dimension in here. Maybe it should have actually 1/2 inch probably is good. All right, gives us enough to weld on. And then the other tricky thing that the guys are going to gripe about is how do we make that up? So the actual slip-on weld flange is going to have a plane. So use that plane, and then use the plane. I usually use the plane of the assembly. Make those coincident. There we go. So now if I pick on the plane, you actually see that cutting down through there. All right. So same thing, we can actually put another one in here. This one I'm going to use the weld neck flange. This one I'm just going to I'll go ahead and put it on there so that way it automatically sizes. But same kind of thing. It put it on backwards, so we're going to fix that. Drag that out, and this one we select that guy, and this one I'm going to pick on the edge. It's actually a sharp edge there, and make those coincident. All right, this one's a little bit tricky to get centered up. So a couple different ways you could do it. Typically, I would create an axis through the center of this guy, but there's other ways we could do it too. Because I made the 3D sketch, let's go ahead and just turn him on. There we go. And you see this little axis right there? Goes to the center of that. What I can do is I can use that axis and then use the plane, that top plane is fine, and make those guys coincident. So it rotates it around, and now if you kind of select on that plane, you can see he has to line up and go through that center axis, which looks good. All right, that way my pipes and flanges and everything will fit real well. All right, let's turn off our 3D sketch, and I'm not going to worry about the one on the bottom. That looks pretty good. But that's pretty much the setup for this guy. Save that guy out. And the reason why you want these guys in there is because, of course, now if we do a new assembly, put this guy into a new assembly. And I'm going to put this assembly in there. At the origin, that looks good. And say, for instance, I want to route these guys up. So I'm going to drag and drop another one in. We'll put them on the same ground plane. Looks good. Maybe I want them... Actually, I don't want them exactly lined up. We'll put them off in some crazy land right there. All right, and maybe I want to pipe these guys up. So a couple different ways we could do it. I do need to save this assembly out. Call it my general arrangement assembly. And this is routing. So I'm going to start with my slip-on weld flange, which is drag and drop it on. And 150 is good. It's getting a 4-inch. Say OK. Now what we are going to do is actually do a route. I do want to make sure I got my short radius elbow, which I do. It's using a 4-inch schedule 40. So I'm going to say OK. Now don't be scared of routing. Really all it is just a bunch of line segments out there. I can tell it where to start and where to go to. So let's go drag another one in. Just plop it on there. Looks good. So those are my two routes. We can use the auto route, but in this case I'm just going to do the line command. So say for instance I want to go in a specific direction, so I'll go over that way. You can hit the tab key to kind of flip, and then we'll go that direction. Notice whenever it puts a 90 in there, it's going to go ahead and put the elbows in, and we can kind of drag that guy around. If I hold down control, pick the endpoints, merge them together, and now they're nice and merged together. Alright, so that's pretty cool. We can finish out of that. And once we finish out of it, now it's going to replace that sketch with elbows and actually pieces of pipe. So notice that the components, the slip-on weld flanges are going to be in there as separate components. The 90 degrees elbows are going to be in there as components. And then the route parts, which are the actual pipes, are going to be in there as separate components. If you ever need to edit the sketch, just pick on the sketch, right-click, do Edit Route, and then it puts you back into a 3D sketch mode where we can put in dimensions if we need to. So maybe that's supposed to be 36 inches up. Looks pretty good. Finish out of the sketch. That should clean it all up, fix it, and then put the pipes back in there. If you want to turn off your sketch, you can just hide it, and that looks pretty good. And if we do a section view on this guy, you'll see that the pieces of pipe are actually hollow pieces of pipe there. So that looks pretty good. Alright, so now for a harder one, we want to put these two guys in. So same kind of thing. You're just going to drag and drop. So you should just be put right there. Again, pick the schedule. Say OK. Make sure I got my short radius. And it automatically sized for the right size. When I'm in the 3D sketch, again, this is where I want to put in more of my flanges if I've got them. Puts out the stub. And then maybe this one. Go ahead and rotate around a little bit. And again, I can give it dimensions. Make sure they're both out and away from the pipes or the tanks. Then from this guy, we're just going to go off. Sometimes you got to go off one and then go off the other. And that doesn't go very well, so we'll drag him on out. There we go. It's looking better. Want to make sure that these guys are both perpendicular. So they're 90 degrees. And then we'll go ahead and put these together. And that looks pretty good. So then of course I can come off of here. I want to put a T or something in. You can see I get a little bit of an error there until I put my T in. There's my T, just a straight T. And we'll just drag and drop it. There you go. Automatically trims off the pipes and everything. So that looks good. And we can finish out of the sketch. Go ahead and hide your 3D sketch. And looks pretty good. So that's a little bit of routing. That's pretty much all I want to cover in this part of the demo. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you start modeling up some tanks. My name's Steve Darcey, and I work with GoEngineer. Thanks.